Hi, this is Anastasia Fisher, President of U.S. Harbors. We're thrilled to be here today talking with Carol Newman Cronin, an Olympic sailor and novelist.
It's great to be here. I live in Jamestown, Rhode Island, which is on the opposite side of the Newport Bridge from the town that a lot of sailors know. And it's a wonderful place to be locked in, locked down, and coronavirus time. I'm a Olympic sailor. I sailed for the United States in 2004 at the Games in Athens. And since then, I've published 3 books, and I have another book coming out in June called Ferry to Cooperation Island. I grew up on Cape Cod in Woods Hole, and I was the harbor yacht club rat. Even as a kid, all I wanted to do was get out on boats and go sailing and run around the harbor and help people and get better at sailing. And I took that to college and really had my eyes opened by college sailing, because it was a whole different level of seriousness and competition from the small yacht club where I started racing. Started sailing Snipes in 1990 as a crew and really enjoyed the level of competition there. And that's really what eventually launched my Olympic campaign. And I'm still sailing Snipes 30 years later, but now as a skipper instead of as a crew.
Great.
I feel most comfortable when I'm on the water, and I find when I'm too far inland or away from it too long, I kind of get antsy. And so if I'm in a new place, I tend to gravitate toward the harbor, wherever the harbor is, or the shore front. And it just gives me a little bit of a calming influence when I'm not on it. And when I am on it, I try to spend as much time on the water as possible, whether it's sailing or paddleboarding or whatever, even running around in powerboats. I feel like you can kind of see the horizon, and that makes me feel good. What I'm most proud of might surprise you, actually. I went to the Olympics in 2004 and won 2 races there, which is obviously a highlight in my history. But the thing that I'm the most proud of is 2 years ago, my teammate and I won the Snipe Women's Worlds in 2018. And the reason I'm the most proud of that, partly it's a world championship, so it's a pretty big deal. But we had to use everything we had to win that championship. And we had to take everything we learned sailing together for 8 years at that point in the Snipe and put it to work for 3 days in Narragansett Bay. And it was a treat to have that regatta here at home, and a real treat to triumph over so many other strong teams. Sailing is a very unusual sport because it requires adjusting to the day. I laugh when I talk to other athletes, like track athletes or swimmers, where they're down to the millisecond of when they do their turns or what their strokes are like. And we just can't get that regimented because every day is different. It depends on the weather, it depends on the waves, it depends on where we're sailing, whether the breeze is more important than anything else, or whether it's a lake where it's going to be really shifty. And so I think we get very good at adjusting to whatever is thrown at us. Right now, that feels like a real strength. In the Olympics, it was a 3-women team. That was the discipline we were in. And now I sail as a double-handed team, and it's a lot different, but a lot of the same skills apply, even though it's a different dynamic with 2 instead of 3. It's kind of like, I guess, adding a child into a couple relationship, where you all of a sudden it affects all the different dynamics of having 3 people. But sailing a double-handed boat, you really have to rely on each other and bring out the best in each other. And that takes a lot of communication, but also a lot of respect for the other sailor. And like I said, I think I've really gotten better at that over the last 15 years or so. I also find it really exciting when I find a commonality between sailing and writing. And that's one of the things I like to explore in blog posts, because in theory, if you look at it from sailing's very physical and writing's very cerebral. But for me, the two really tie together because they both play on couple of my strengths are self-motivation and creativity. You know, nobody was holding my feet to the fire to go raise money and start an Olympic campaign. And same thing with publishing books. You know, it took a fire in my belly to get those done. It was just, you know, solve one problem, solve the next problem, and eventually you look back and you got it done. I can remember as a young kid putting a book together and trying to put words in it. So I've always really had this idea that creating books was something I wanted to do. My grandmother was a novelist, and so I learned from her growing up that books came from somewhere and someone. Then in high school and college, I did a lot of writing and understood that this was something I wanted to make as part of my life. But it wasn't until till my 40s, I guess, when I was really able to sit down and put a story together that got published. And that was obviously a whole new level of excitement to see that first book come out and be able to share it with readers. All my books are coastal fiction. And to me, that means they take place near the water and they couldn't take place anywhere else. And obviously that's because I like being on the water. So I tend to want to put my books there. This Ferry to Cooperation Island, which comes out in June, will be my 4th book. I have 2 young adult books about a young boy who goes back in time to 2 different hurricanes. Oliver's Surprise is the first one, and that's 1938. That takes place right here in Jamestown. Was at the end of the street that we live on at a small boatyard. And then the second one is called Cape Cod Surprise, and that's Oliver goes back to 1954 to Hurricane Carol, and that takes place in Woods Hole. So that was a way of revisiting my childhood through a young boy's eyes and imagining what Woods Hole was like in the 50s dealing with a major hurricane. And my 3rd book is called Game of Sails, and it's a story about 2 opposites teaming up to go to the Olympics who are trying not to fall in love. So that was a way to really fictionalize my Olympic experience. And I actually started writing that book long before I ever imagined I would go to the games myself. And so that was kind of a backwards thing. It looks obvious in hindsight, but that's not quite how it happened. Didn't quite admit to myself that I wanted to do, pursuing the Olympic dream. And maybe I was writing about it as a way to live through it. And then an opportunity came along where I could actually do it in real life, which was even more exciting. And the other funny about it in hindsight is I thought the book was finished before I went to the games. And once I came home, I realized, okay, this book's not, we need to take it. It had originally ended right at the end of the Olympic trials. And once I got home from the games, I realized the book can't end until they go to the Olympics. And at that point I'd done the research, so I was able to finish the book. My 4th book will be out in June, and it's called Ferry to Cooperation Island. And it's about a ferry captain who has to team up with a woman who steals his job. And it takes place on a small island, which I created in my mind, called Brenton Island, which is where Brenton Reef is. It's where the Brenton Tower used to be off Newport. So it's about 4 miles south of the entrance to Narragansett Bay for all the sailors who have been in and out of there. And I created an island to place these characters on because I didn't want to be locked into existing islands. Like if I'd used Block Island, I would have felt like I had to be true to the geography of that. And there were aspects of, I didn't want to be limited in that way. And so I created a new island, which I believe could be where it is, but obviously isn't. And then put 36 people on it and had to figure out who these people were and what the story was that I was trying to tell. And one of the stories is how outsiders are treated by small insular towns and how they adjust and how the locals adjust as newcomers come into their midst. But the biggest theme of the book is right in the title. It's cooperation. And the biggest lesson of all is that cooperating with your fellow islanders is more effective than competing with them. One of the things I've learned about is this idea that we're all stronger together, and that cooperating and being a community is a strong thing, and that you have to accept people as they are rather than trying to make them into what they should be. I think when we're working as a team, and we're stronger than we are on our own, and that goes for writing books and reading books and living in a strange time that we're all existing in right now, and also for sailing competition.